Welcome back, and thank you for being here for day three of the Together We Rise Summit. I'm Sylvie with Taproot EFT, and I first want to just personally congratulate all of our co-authors. Our book hit number one new release and bestseller last night on day one. So, a lot to celebrate today. And today we're diving into one of the most personal and liberating parts of the healing journey, reclaiming the self. So after pain, after survival, after the unraveling, there comes a quiet, a powerful moment when we begin to ask, who am I now? Who was I before the world told me who to be? Today's panel is all about that return, the reclaiming of voice, of truth, of intuition, the parts of ourselves that may have been buried, dismissed, or silenced in the trauma, but were never truly lost. You'll hear from co-authors who remembered themselves piece by piece, who rebuilt identity not through perfection, but through presence, who learned to trust the whisper of their intuition again and to let it guide them home to a deeper truth. This is what freedom looks like, not the absence of pain, but the full expression of self on the other side of it. So as you listen today, I invite you to reflect on the parts of you that are ready to come home, because reclaiming the self isn't just healing, it's revolution. So let's begin. So we're going to have each co-author introduce themselves individually, like we have been doing. And so the first question is going to Dr. Teakle Taylor. What parts of yourself were lost or silenced in trauma?
Thank you, Sylvie. That was just beautiful. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
All
thank you.
right. My name is Leah Teakle Taylor. I'm a physician in St. Petersburg, Florida. I have a practice called Docs Outside the Box with my co-owner and partner in crime, Dr. Lana Garner. She is a doctor of Oriental medicine, and together we've built a clinic that can combine the best of all worlds for people. So that gave me a lot of ground to answer the questions in this project of ours. Um, as a physician, going through medical school and the training after that, um, one begins to learn to more or less build a exoskeleton around oneself, because so much of the job is so stressful and so much of the job is so traumatic and so much of the job is so gut wrenching, especially in the surgical arena or in the trauma arena, that in order to be good at the job and survive, um, day in, day out, the on call nights, the training, you really do have to manufacture if it's not already there. Now, some people may be blessed with a good outer shell, but I was not. And so I uh, found that I had developed a hard outer shell. I was although I like to fancy that I'm feminine, I had become very in touch with my manly side. And it seemed to work very well for a given goal. What I gave up in all doing that, of course, I was young and dumb and striving and goal driven and mother of two kids. What I gave up was the niceties of the softer side of myself. And it just so happened that was easy for me to do because of past trauma. It wasn't easy to look inside. It was much easier to build a harder outer shell and do a hard outer job that would keep me ever so busy. So I didn't really look inside, if that makes any sense. So this was a great opportunity. Thank you, Sylvie and Kristen, for the opportunity to just stop, put on the brakes, and look inside. Whatever is in there, it may be like a larva, but it is what it is. And it's what I needed to be to start over with defining who I am.
Mhm. Wow, I love that so much. So many of us can relate to that hard exterior, exoskeleton, as you said. And I love how, yeah, this really did pull out the stories of what's underneath and that softer side inside of us. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Raman, Can you share with us how did you begin to hear your intuition again on your journey?
Mm. Yeah, I love what Leah shared. First of all, I'm Roman. I'm a mental health practitioner and a sacred feminine embodiment teacher and coach, and I do a lot of other things too. But I want to really respond to your question and what Leah just mentioned. I think I did the same thing. You know, my background was in science too. Started off with biological sciences, wanting to go to medical school and that exterior you build, you know, to show a certain face or show up in a certain way, I could really relate to. And so, Kristen, your question, what was your question again? It was like, how did I find my intuition?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think the first and foremost thing was tuning back into my body because I was so disconnected from my body for years, especially being in, you know, like you said, the medical professional field. You learn to like leave parts of yourself out. And that's appropriate. I think, you know, you can take certain parts of yourself to certain spaces, but it was really hurting me not to like show up as my full self, you know, and that there was a bigness to my spirit, and that's okay to be in that bigness, and it's safe to be in that bigness. So I think the first and foremost step for me was to understand how to bring my body back into resonance and come back to the earth and come back to myself and then authentically start expressing. Yeah.
Ah, that's beautiful. What were some of the, like putting that into action, what did that look like?
Mm. I would say it started off with like yoga, right? Like just typing up, you know, yoga for beginners on YouTube, like when I was like 20. And I think that began my journey because right after that session, I just felt so much immense gratitude because there were spaces like available in my body. And, you know, I wasn't holding on to this stress and I moved through some emotions and feelings. And so it was a very somatic experience. As a therapist, I was doing like the mental work, but the physical work, like it just clicked in that moment that like physically, I really need to invite my body into moving stuff through and integrating my healing journey. So I would say the action steps were just like the somatic practices like yoga, singing mantras, you know, just chanting and singing, you know, was such a big opener. I still am like trying to step more into, like I said, my bigness and my voice. And so that's something I oftentimes do is like sing and dance and find that playfulness and move through even grief that I'm feeling, pain that I'm feeling through these somatic practices. And they've been very important on my journey.
Hmm. So steps that helped you to get grounded and be present in your body is what it sounds like I'm hearing you say, which is really challenging for us sometimes, isn't it? When we're like Leo was sharing, we've got those professions that keep us moving and going and doing, and sometimes it's more comfortable to be busy and to move in a way that's distracting and
Mm,
not allowing ourselves to sit still and be in the moment and be present.
right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So, Kevin, what role did reclaiming your identity play in your own healing?
So I realized that I had the power, basically, and it's always there, no matter how overwhelmed or busy I was. I realized at any moment I can say no to some other things and say yes to me. Say yes to getting myself back to health, back to strength, back to, being clear-minded and so on. And it just took a decision. It
Mm,
took a decision to not lay in bed so long. It took a decision to realize that, hey, the only one that's going to do this is me. And so I can stay where I am at, back then, exhausted, overwhelmed, unmotivated, and so on, or I can decide to do something different, to start pushing the snowball the other direction.
Mm.
So just that realization that it was me, and then all I needed to do was figure out, okay, what is my strategy? And I started to identify a couple things, right? Ooh, I could do that. I could do that. This for my body, this for my mind. And slowly I just built it all together and then just tried it. I'm a perfectionist, so it was hard to just say to commit to go, because what if I'm wrong, and what if it's not the best thing, the best exercise in the world or whatever. I just started doing it. At least I was doing something, right? And so as I started doing, I just started feeling better and better, and I was on a right track, right? There may not be the right track, it was certainly a right track, and started to feel good.
I love that so much. So it's interesting because what each of you has said, when we think about that journey to self and reclaiming our identity of who we are, who we always were, we first have to, as Leah was sharing, kind of listen to our body and the way that it's speaking to us and what it has to say. We have to get still to be able to do that and move into our senses and then understand that we already have whatever we need already there within ourselves. So for you, Kevin, was that process a challenging? Like, can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that came up? Because I mean, I have mornings when I wake up and sometimes I'm just like, okay, it's go time. And then I have other mornings where I think I'm going to hit the snooze just a couple times. Tell us about those challenges and how you were able to move through them in those moments.
Yeah, setting the alarm and the previous night committing that I'm not going to hit the snooze. That the commitment the previous night is pretty key. Instead of trying to be so mentally aware right when you wake up, to remember,
Mm.
oh wait, what's my commitment? What am I trying to do in this life? So making that commitment the previous night, and then just realizing no matter how I felt, bottom line was I was going to get up. So there were times like in my couple 100-day commitments of doing the mind and body routine, there were some times I felt horrible, like really bad. And I got up anyway, and I came downstairs, and this is where I do it, and I just still went after it. And sometimes it wasn't the full, right? It wasn't the full workout or the full exercise or whatever, but I at least did some of it. And every single time, no matter what, I felt phenomenal, way, way, way better than if I hadn't done that, than if I slept in. I noticed a very big difference. So all those times of choosing to wake up, no matter how I felt, and doing it, that was the snowball I was pushing, and I just felt better. And I proved to myself that that was the right decision, right? I felt better in my mind and body just by pushing through that discomfort because I committed. I committed myself. And it was a commitment not only to me, but to everyone I love, right? My family, my friends, my business. They deserve my best. And I'm not going to do my best by staying in bed.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I'm thinking of this book that I'd read, and of course the name of it is escaping me at the moment. But what it said in there was he was sharing about his mornings with his boys. So he had, he's got three boys. His wife is expecting boy number four. He says, you can only imagine the movement and activity in my home. And he was saying one night, and he's thinking about, like, oh, here we go. We're doing it again. It's another one of those nights because the boys are getting out of the bath and they're wrestling and they're not getting pajamas on. And then he said he stopped at one point and he said, this isn't a rough night. It's not another one of those nights. This is every night. This is our routine. And when he said that to me, it was kind of like this light bulb went off. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so much truth. And I think sometimes it's a hard reality that we all need to hear because I'm so guilty. I think I hit my snooze like three times this morning. And I'm like, I know I have to be up at this time because I've got things I got to do, things happening today. And I just thought, okay. And then at one point I thought to myself, okay, no, it's time, stop pushing. But that does what we do on a regular basis becomes that norm. And it takes that active remembrance of doing the thing. So, what about the rest of you? What does that look like for you? I invite you all to kind of pitch in or respond. Like, what does that look like for you as far as the reminders of how you're keeping yourself committed to the promises that you've made to yourself?
I can jump in. I think having some sort of, like Kevin was saying, like a routine, like a self-commitment you have. Like I know for a fact I need to go to the gym like 3 times a week. Like that's a commitment to build the masculine part of myself because I think it can be so soft and it helps me build that structure. So just, I think discipline is so important. And sometimes we have an interesting relationship with the word discipline and having like a spiritual practice. So I have like a mental, physical, and spiritual check-in with myself like weekly, where I can be like, all right, where am I mentally? Where am I emotionally? How am I treating my body? What am I, putting inside my body? What am I eating? And so those check-ins, even if I'm not doing everything every single day, just that weekly reminder for myself of like, all right, how did we do this week? Did we, take care of these different aspects of self are so helpful. And because if I don't do that, what happens is my body, it's such a, you know, cool instrument. It'll let you know, it's like, my body will start hurting or I'll have these psychosomatic symptoms. So before it gets to that point, now I have the routines.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. So, what I'm hearing from you all is that we have to really get still with ourselves to listen to the body, the inner voices,
Mm.
because the actions of what we do and how we're showing up essentially become our identity. So those routines that we become committed to in our everyday, right? They become our identity and who we are, which is terrifying, maybe some days if we think of it that way. But I love what Kevin said about when we make that commitment, not just to ourselves, but also to our loved ones,
Mm.
that this is who I'm choosing. This is what I'm choosing for me and my loved ones. So, Katya, how has your truth evolved through this process that we're kind of laying out here?
Oh boy, interesting question. First of all, hello, I'm Katya Jones. I am a voice movement therapy practitioner, certified with the International Association of Voice Movement Therapy, and that is a somatic expressive arts modality that works with the embodied voice. So there's a lot of sound that goes into it, and a lot of that listening and that tuning in with the body. Personally, what I do is uh, first thing, I mean, I, go to the bathroom and whatnot, but first thing when I wake up is I sit on my favorite chair and I write in my journal for 10 minutes. Um, Whatever's coming up. And I've been doing that for a couple months now and it has been transformative. It's been incredibly helpful. And it's just this little, my life is so chaotic right now. It's a little promise to myself that I will have time to check in. And that's just so essential. Um, in terms of the transformation through this process, I think I think for me, I've had a tendency to hide through my whole life. I mean, talking about that exoskeleton, that started for me in middle school. Um, as a closeted lesbian with anxiety in middle school, it was just like, nope, that is not happening. And so it's been a long journey of coming home to myself, of coming back into that place of it doesn't matter if everyone that I meet on the street understands me. It doesn't matter if I am too much for some people or whatever it might be. When I do show up fully, that is met with tremendous gifts and tremendous resonance. And so this process for me has been one of going deeper and deeper into my own story in a fully unflinching way and going, where did this actually start? What am I actually working with? What am I actually sharing? And what am I here to do? And that's been tremendously powerful. Um, Putting out this book has been someone on one of the other calls of the webinar said it's like an unveiling, and I feel like it's that like that for me too. It's this sense of I'm not allowed to hide anymore because this book's out. This is a like when I do things, I do them like 150%. This is like global accountability. Like, oh shit, I'm here to do this thing. So that's a really big thing for me is like I am here to help people come into their bodies, come into their power, find their voices, and connect with the earth. And I don't get to hide from that anymore because this book is out. And that is huge. So, heartfelt thanks for sure. And it's also been really beautiful to get to kind of widen that peephole with all of you as we go into this. So it's like, okay, how does it feel to share this with a few people on a call? How does it feel to share this with more? And that's been very powerful as well.
Mm. Okay, I want to say that your voice feels like meditation, so you're certainly in the perfect profession. I love that so much.
Thank you.
And of course, you led us right into what I'm going to ask all of you now about this whole book writing process. Leo, we're going to come back to you. What would you say was most challenging for you in writing your chapter?
Well, it's hard to be so vulnerable.
Mhm.
And when you're just writing it down on a piece of paper, you can imagine that it's just going to stay there. And so you can write whatever you're thinking and what you're feeling. And it's probably stuff more that you can write down than you would ever tell your therapist in therapy. You're just like, oh, yeah, this happened. And then I felt like this. Um, and so it is extremely freeing to sort of pretend you're doing it sort of anonymously. And then late one night, just push send to Sylvie or Kristen. And in the morning, go, what have I done? But it's a freeing, fabulous feeling to just sit yourself down for a couple of hours and spill and let it out. No one's going to know who you are. You can pretend no one's ever going to see this. But you know in your heart, this is the right thing for you to do. And this is why you mysteriously found your way to Kristen and Sylvie. These things are come to us at the right time, I think, when we're ready. I really love what Kevin shared about planning the night before to get out of bed and do stuff. Because if you wait till the morning, it's a bad time to make your decision to commit to yourself. So I found the writing part of this just, I could pretend to be anonymous. And then the amount of trust I have in Sylvia and Kristen that they won't let me, put a great big fat foot in my mouth. But that they'll take it and get the good out of it and then go, okay, that's a little much. But it's very, such a supportive environment to do this in. I wish all doctors got a chance to do this because most of them don't even know they need to because of what we are talking about.
Wow. Oh my gosh, so many things in what you just said. So there's a level of freedom in letting our story kind of out into the world. And often for the first time, it releases this weight that maybe we're feeling in parts of our story that we didn't even know were there. And then the beautiful thing is that if we choose to share it from that point, because maybe some of you watching, just this process alone is going to be so cathartic and therapeutic and beneficial that you may choose to just stop there. But if you choose to go on and share it on some platform and put it into print, you can make changes to it, right? You can put boundaries on what it is that you want to share. That is beautiful. Thank you, Leah. Raman, what about you?
So what were the challenges, right, of writing this? I think there were several, just like kind of sharing my upbringing and who I am and how I'm like forging a new way of being almost in some ways, right? Because a lot of my story is about the systems that keep us asleep, right? And like whether it be like a patriarchal structure or just, the academic structure of, these systems that weigh you down. It was hard to talk about that because it's been so much of my life. That's where you kind of derive some of like your academic validation or from like society. I feel like that's where you feel like you're validated, but what does self-validation look like was a big part of my share. And I think it was kind of challenging to put my whole life into a chapter. I think that was a big challenge too, of like, how do I narrow everything down and share who I am? Yeah, so there were quite a few challenges. I think my biggest challenge was like, how do I keep everything under 5,000 words? Because like I said, I feel so multidimensional. Like I feel so like, you know, big is again like that spirit, right? So it was a really good challenge of like, we'll condense and share, the important part. Like Katya was saying, like, what am I here to actually do? And I think, yeah, so just kind of having that in the back of my head of like, I'm sharing how I rose, right? And that's part of why I'm Ramen Rose, like stepping into that rose and sharing how I stepped into the beauty way.
Mhm. That's so beautiful because that's a hard thing. And I think all of you experience that where it's kind of like, I have this whole lifetime of experiences. Which
Mhm.
one do I share? And so
Yeah.
the advice is always if you could only share one, what would that one be? If you think of what is your life legacy, what is that legacy and what does that look like? And it's beautiful to have the opportunity to craft that. Thank you so much for sharing. Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, that being part of this book is just so amazing. I'm so grateful for the chance. The thing that this did is, I've always enjoyed trying to help people get to the next level in life, whether it be in sales or whatever. And this put me to task. This put me to task on my experiences, my journey, and to actually share it. So I got committed and it made me do it, or else years from now, I still wouldn't have shared it. And I think other people are going through exhaustion and overwhelm, and it might be the thing that they hear that they're like, oh my gosh, there is a way or something. So it forced me to do it. And yes, Ramen, like you were saying, it's hard to figure out what do I say, what do I leave out because there's so much to it, and maybe that's in follow-up, adventures, whatever. Um, but that was a big challenge, is to figure out, okay, how do I relay all my failures, or I should say feelings of failures, my made up, right,
Mhm.
imperfections that I had difficulty with. Which ones do I put down, and then coming through, right? How to put that on paper, coming through, what was the energy, what was the mind shift, and the feeling, the body shift, and so on. So it was fun. It was fun to do it, just being more creative and purposeful than I have been in a while.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing because it's one of those too where all those fears and the doubts and all the emotions of vulnerability, fear of vulnerability, imposter syndrome, the message always trumps that, and it's even bigger than all those
Yeah.
things. And that's why we move forward and tell. Katya, what about you?
Um, for me, I mean, certainly some of what other people have said, like Raman said, how do you fit into such a short amount of words, especially as one of like for I know for both of us, we've had this expansion of like I am becoming so much more, and now I have to fit into a small space again. That was certainly part of it. I think, I mean, you just said, Kristen, the words imposter syndrome for me, especially at the beginning. There is some of that for me, not as a writer, because I am a writer, but as a healer. There was some, like, I grew up in a family of healers and like masterclass level healers. And I was just like, who am I to call myself a healer? I'm just beginning. I'm in the beginning middle of my story, not like I'm not some like healing elder that has this whole lifetime to look back on. But I think, healers, I've come to the point of realizing, healers have to start somewhere too. And I have done enough that I can call myself a healer, even if I'm not ready to call myself a master. And that's worth something. Yeah, and I think also the radical honesty needed to write something like this. I know that over the course of my several drafts, I think in the second draft I went, well, I think I need to include that. I did not see that coming, but well, that really intense thing that happened to me is actually a core part of my story. Okay, we're doing this. Like there was just this incredible radical honesty that needed to happen for this story to be true. And that was challenging as well.
Yeah, the story kind of takes on a life of its own, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And it
Yep.
shares what
All
it's supposed to share. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for all of you joining and being on here today with us.
Kristen, can I introduce myself real quick? I forgot to.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm Kevin Stewart. I'm a regular dad, husband, businessman, and I went through some challenges in health with my wife and supporting her and losing myself through that, and lots of fears. I lived in fear for a very long time, fear of what might happen, and so I basically came to shortcut, found encouraging forward, because I think there's fear always out there, and I think the key is you push through the fear. And the only, courage doesn't exist without fear. So with all the fear and uncertainty out there, if you push through, that's the courage and to move forward in life. So that's kind of the action, couraging forward. That's the action word that I just came up with and I'm rolling with. So it's about, hey, fear's always going to be there. Push through, find a strategy, right? Once you find a strategy, push through, try it. And if you fail, you go again, you go again, you go again. So it's kind of fun, just starting this out. I don't have some giant business or huge coach or anything like that yet, but just definitely here to help other people and help guide them in little ways to understand, hey, you can move forward, you can step forward when you're uncertain in life.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much. Sylvie, I'm going to let you take us out.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of our co-authors today for reminding us what it means to come home to ourselves, and to everyone who joined us for this powerful conversation. Together We Rise is officially available, and today's stories are a living example of what's possible when we stop abandoning who we are and start listening within. So my hope is that as you read this book, you feel something awaken, a truth, a knowing, a spark of the self that you're here to be, because reclaiming who you are is the most radical feeling of all. So grab your copy if you haven't already. We're shooting for international bestseller, so spread the word. There's links all over all the social media platforms. And we'll see you tomorrow for another beautiful day of Rising Together, day 4. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.